Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. It is the first book in the Wheel of Time series, and there will be a spoiler-free as well as a spoiler-filled section to the video. So originally, the Wheel of Time was actually pretty low priority on my TBR, but I decided I want to read at least The Eye of the World before I started the show on Amazon Prime, and I also kind of was more eager to start the series after finishing Stormlight because I really love Stormlight and I wanted to read what inspired Sanderson to start writing himself. And I really couldn't be happier with my decision to start this series because it's only the first book in the series and it's already such a special book to me. So you're probably thinking, how is just the first book so special? Well, really, I have to go back 10 years to explain how it was. So when I was a kid, I really loved Pokemon, and Pokemon it's not really fantasy. I guess it's more of a low sci-fi kind of thing because they use advanced technologies. But anyways, I was really into the movies and the games and the shows when I was a kid, and there was this feeling I used to get when I was watching the movies, and I really don't know how to put the emotion into words for you. It's kind of like, picture the feeling of like wonder and the feeling of adventure, combine them into just one emotion that's just a complete heightened version of each combined, and at the same time there's still more to it. I really don't have a better way of explaining it, but that's that's the best I can do. And as I said, this was like at least 10 years ago, and I just haven't had those feelings since. And that was actually what got me interested in the fantasy genre as a whole. I just figured if anything was going to bring it back, it would be something I find in fantasy. And for some reason, when I was young and stupid, this just did not include fantasy books. I just, for whatever reason, refused to read when I was younger. And I've enjoyed a lot of fantasy stories since, like the Lord of the Rings movies and Game of Thrones before that got shit. But they were really good. Some of the best stuff I've watched in general, not even just fantasy, but they still at the same time just didn't give me the same feeling. As I was saying, I hadn't had that feeling since I was a kid, and that was until I read this book. And soon after starting it, the feeling just came back to me, and it was just such a nostalgic thing. And the journey Jordan presented you with in this book is just, it just resonated with me on some level, and the excitement I felt watching the characters embark on that journey, it made me feel like a kid again. It was such an enjoyable experience from start to finish. So for those of you who don't know, The Eye of the World is the first book in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, and the story is set during the Third Age, an age of prophecies. The Dark One is stirring, and we meet our main characters Rand, Perrin, Matt, Egwene, and the fifth I won't spoil who joins us later. After an attack on their village by half-beast, half-man creatures called Trollocs, they set out on an adventure that takes them across the lands into a world they know frighteningly little about. So this story is a story of growth, and just like how The Eye of the World itself is just the beginning of the story of the Wheel of Time, it is also seemingly just the beginning of the growth of our characters. We see Matt, Rand, and Perrin grow from these naive boys who've never left the Two Rivers, and the Two Rivers itself is very cut off from the rest of the world. People only hear about the happenings of the outside world through stories that they get from peddlers and very rarely gleemen, who are these guys that go around telling tales. They learn very quickly about the dangers that lie in the shadows, as well as those they least expect in the light. And it's during this harsh journey that our characters grow into men, after going through their own trials and hardships. The world building is detailed and extensive, and it never really felt like ham-fisted, just exposition dumps. The characters are setting out into a world they know very little about. What they learn, you learn. We learn a lot of about the different cultures and the different lore that's present in the world. There's also some really good foreshadowing in this book, which I can't get into because of spoilers. The magic system in this is also great. Now, I still barely understand the magic system after finishing this. You really only scratch the surface of information you get in this book. Now, I believe the magic system works in a way where you have users who can touch the true source. And the true source, once you touch that, you have access to the one power. And then you have the one power itself, which in of itself has 5 powers. And these 5 powers are wind, fire, earth, and water. And then the fifth is spirit. Now, there's a male side to the one power called Sa'idin, and a female part called Sa'idar. People who touch the male side, Sa'idin, they have an affinity for fire and earth, whereas people who touch the female side, Sa'idar, have an affinity for wind and water. When it comes to spirit, I don't think they mentioned in this book who has an affinity for that. I would guess it's kind of either a rarity for both, or it's just equal share between both. Men who use the one power are seen as dangerous because the male side of the power is tainted by the dark one, and the more you use it, the closer to insanity you become. Now, that's pretty much all I've gathered about the magic system. I think that's all I should have by the time I'm finished the first book, anyways. As I said, you do really only scratch the surface of the information that's pertaining to the magic system. And it's not even just the magic system, really. All the knowledge in the world, you really only get the surface level stuff in this. Don't really have a firm grasp on the timeline. I have no idea how to plot everything just yet. I know there was the actually, I won't go into detail for spoiler reasons, but I don't have the best grasp on the timeline. Let me just say that. I can understand how this lack of clarity could be off-putting to some people, but it didn't really bother me. This is the first book in a 14-book series, 15 if you include New Spring. Now, I didn't go into the first book in a series that long expecting all the answers I get during that first book to be answered by the end of it. I actually don't have any cons for this book, which was a pleasant surprise because when I was looking at this book on Goodreads, the reviews were quite mixed, and some popular complaints I saw were that it is a blatant copy of Tolkien's work, the pacing is too slow, and that Jordan can be so long-winded to the point where he includes an unnecessary level of detail. I haven't read The Lord of the Rings yet, so I can't speak on that point, but I did watch a Daniel Green video where I believe he mentioned that Jordan himself even said that yes, I took Tolkien's formula because I wanted to put my own spin on it. So I don't think even if I did read Lord of the Rings that I would really hold it against the guy if he's coming out and saying that himself. And when it comes to the complaints of pacing and level of detail, or just long-windedness in general, I highly disagree with both complaints. The pacing, if you think the pacing in this is too slow, I disagree with you on like a fundamental level. And when it comes to the level of detail, I can understand that complaint, but I still disagree with it. I felt like the level of detail and the pacing both worked in tandem to kind of really increase the level of immersion I felt throughout the entire book, and it kept me engrossed from start to finish, really. I feel like if Jordan didn't give you the same level of detail, you would miss out on some kind of like some of the innate understanding you get from those levels of description, but you kind of take them for granted as you're reading. For example, he can be painfully descriptive when it comes to what people wear. That never bothered me really, because if he didn't go into such a high level of detail regarding that, like, there's just certain stuff you might not pick up on in future books, and even in this book alone. Like, if you saw somebody dripped out in velvet from head to toe, you would understand straight away that, hey, this could possibly be somebody that's a merchant from Whitebridge. Or if you see somebody in just the most bizarre getup of bright colors, you would think, oh, maybe this is a Tuathan. Or what was the other really fucking odd one? People dressed in loads of stripes, you would think, oh, maybe they're from the village that Rand visited. The level of detail he went to was actually pretty useful for me as well, personally, because I am just straight up garbage at imagining how things and people look just from reading descriptions in books. And another thing I especially struggle with is imagining how faces look just from book descriptions. So I was actually surprised when there was a description of how somebody looked in this book, and I was actually vividly able to imagine how they look from head to toe, face and outfit. And I won't say who, but it was a if you've read the book, it was the character that you meet for the first time after falling off the wall into a certain garden. I think that's vague enough to not be a spoiler. So when it comes to the fundamental disagreement about the pacing complaint I mentioned earlier, what I meant by that is that, in my opinion, there is no set speed for pacing that will just instantly make that pacing good or bad. So in the same vein, I feel like pacing that is bad is pacing that is inappropriate for the story that's being told. So if you think the pacing for this story is bad, I just fundamentally disagree with you, because I think the pacing for this is perfect. I'm sure you could make it a bit faster if you wanted, but I personally wouldn't. Our characters are embarking on a long journey, and the fate of the world depends on them reaching their destination, and if you ask me, it needs to feel like it. The journey is slow and time is spent showing us the world. We get to see both the rising tension that's visible in the cities and villages that we see along the way, and there's also some kind of hidden tension in the background that we learn from stories that of other happenings in other parts of the world, and we kind of also see this slowly rising tension in how the darkness is stirring and how it's affecting the world around them. Winter has been there non-stop for way longer than it should be. This was also the first book that me hooked from the start. Not even just from the start, from the prologue. The prologue features this guy called the Dragon who stands off against the Dark One while he's like on the edge of madness, and it was a serious banger. I really like the characters in this. As I said earlier, this is a story of growth. Majority of the main cast are teenagers, and they come with the flaws associated with being young and stupid. In some cases, very fucking stupid. But anyways, each character is flawed in their own ways, and as much as they annoyed me at times, they really wouldn't have the same sense of realism if they didn't have these flaws. That's all I have to say for the spoiler free section. So, for spoilers, I kind of feel like I gave all the general praise I had in the spoiler free section. So, for this section, I'm just going to go more detailed into specifically the characters and just a few plot points that particularly stood out to me. For the cast as a whole, I just really loved the relationships between everyone and the different dynamics that were set up. Like, I remember at the start of the story, I remember thinking Perrin, Rand, and Matt's relationship weren't really all that at the start, but you really quickly learn just how strong their bond is, and I thought it was pretty funny the way Perrin and Rand were like continuously like, God, I wish X were here because he knows how to deal with girls, or whatever problem they were having. And there was also just so many moments where one of the three would look at one or the other and they would just instantly know something is wrong with them just at a glance. And they really do have a strong friendship that I just didn't get at the start. So when everybody gets split up at Shadar Lagoth, it is the catalyst for the boys to grow. And Rand and Matt specifically, it was such a heartwarming friendship to watch, and it really got tested time and time again. Rand is such a saint because I know if it was me, I would have told Matt to fuck right off. Like, I think 10 minutes tops after leaving Shadar Lagoth with that dagger. Seriously, he was getting on my nerves, even though I understood why it was happening. And if I was in Rand's shoes, he would have been left in the dust so quick. Matt was always a lovable idiot, but he fucking reached new heights of annoyance and idiocy after getting that dagger. And it was just so cool to see Rand stick with him through thick and thin. And likewise, when Rand was just incapacitated with the fever and Matt returned the favor, that was such a heartwarming moment. Rand was out for the count, and Matt, through all his faults, was there for him. Their friendship is that strong that it perseveres through the influence of the dagger. I thought Perrin's arc with Ilias and Egwene, I thought the arc with those two and Perrin was awesome. Just seeing Perrin slowly become a wolf brother and watching him slowly and reluctantly come to terms with that fact. And I thought this went both ways for Perrin and Rand. I thought both were really good, kind of more realistic approaches at the discovery of power within yourself. You know, neither of them straight away thought, oh, this is so cool, I need to test this out as soon as possible. They both really feared what they were becoming, and they both resisted in their own ways. I also really liked Nynaeve in this. She was one of my favorites, and I actually liked her from the start. I'm not sure if you're meant to, but she kind of reminded me of Set from Mistborn. She's not nearly as mean and merciless, but she does come off as very strict and sometimes very cold, and you can see straight through this that it's just a mask, really, because she really is a very caring person, and she does have the best interests of everyone from the Two Rivers at heart. She really does care about everybody from Emond's Field. And I loved her dynamic with Moiraine and Lan. She hates the former and loves the latter. And I saw somebody on Goodreads complain that the Lan and the Nynaeve ship came out of nowhere, but like, did we read the same book? Because I thought it was fairly obviously sprinkled throughout that Nynaeve was crushing on Lan. I can't really remember it being reciprocated until the end, but it was definitely there. The slow build up to Rand being the Dragon Reborn was fucking phenomenal. There's just so many little crumbs along the way alluding to his power, like when he restored Bella's fatigue when they were on the run. The build up was like a box getting fuller and fuller until it just can't contain anymore, and you're still stuffing shit in it, and then it just explodes at the end. And watching Rand just do so much insane stuff with the one power for the first time, it fried my brain. There was so much going on, I could barely follow it, but I was so hyped. I loved every fucking line of that part of the book. I kept the worst to last, guys. Egwene, fucking Egwene, I can't stand her. I detest her. She makes my skin crawl. I hope with my whole heart that she dies as soon as possible. Seriously, I hated her even when she was a fucking kid in the preface chapter. And I hate her even more when she's more grown. She is infuriating. She always manages to find the most annoying thing to say at the worst times possible. And even worse, at times she acts like a just completely useless airhead, and we just know she's not that kind of person. We know she's very capable, and we know she is, if Moraine is to be believed, she is a potentially very powerful one power user. She just does so many things to annoy me. Like the way she snaps at Rand is just infuriating. I don't know if it's just because Rand is my boy, but fucking even Nynaeve does it to everybody, not even just Rand. But at least with Nynaeve, I know she still cares about everybody deep down beneath the snappings. But when it comes to Egwene, she just literally does it out of her own selfish pride, and it just annoys me every time so much. The way she composes herself is just so irritating. She gets giddy over the smallest things, the smallest hints of things going her way, and she gets so overexcited. And it's like the entire world is in the near collapse. Like when she finds out she could be an Aes Sedai, she gets so giddy and she starts just absolutely brown nosing Moiraine. And then towards the end, she's like, "Fucking oh Rand, you'd love to be my warder, wouldn't you, Rand? Oh Rand, you'd love to be my little bitch boy, wouldn't you, Rand? Oh, wouldn't you love that, Rand?" And it's so annoying. And then she had the audacity to be annoyed at Rand when he pushed her when she was stomping off to give the Forsaken, something from the legends. She stomped off to give it a little bitch slap, and Rand stopped her, and then she has the nerve to be angry with him about it. Oh. And then she's with the Tuatha and she screws around with Aram, and then later on she's all like, "Oh, who's El's Rand? Oh, who's Elaine Rand?" And then she's like, "Oh, what's this about Min Rand?" And it's just like, shut up! Honestly, just shut up! I'm so sick of you. Just be quiet for the rest of the book, please. And I know the stuff with her and Aram is just her coping with everything that's going on, but I just don't care. I don't care about her. She is so annoying that I just don't care about the little bit of good about her character. I need to scrape under all the annoying shit to get to. I hate her. I hope she dies. I also don't care for her relationship with Rand in the slightest. Egwene even said herself in the earlier chapter I was talking about when they were kids. She mentioned that she didn't even spend that much time with Rand. They were just the couple that everybody in the village assumed would end up together. The side characters in this were all great. I loved them all. They were all really unique, and they do need to be expanded on in future books. Obviously, can't do that much in the first one alone, but they were really good. I think the standouts for me were Lan, Loyal, Tom, Ilias, Elaine, and Dewan. Actually, I really enjoyed those two as well. I probably just named all the important side characters there, but I really did enjoy them all thoroughly. Tom and Loyal were just were great companions. I think Tom is really the only one who genuinely cares about the boys besides Nynaeve. I think Nynaeve and Tom are the only ones that have their best interests at heart. I don't trust Moraine at all. Tom was kind of the grandfatherly figure for Rand and Matt at a certain point after they split up, and just seeing him go to try and fend off the Fade in Whitebridge was so good. And Loyal, I fucking love Loyal. He is the first Ogier we meet in the story. Don't know if I pronounced that right, but he's the first one we meet, and he's this lovable giant, and he's like humorously apologetic because he thinks that humans are just really sensitive about their short lifespans compared to the Ogier, and just seeing his interactions with Rand especially was so good. I thought the use of the Dark One and his minions in this was really well done. I loved how seamlessly they appeared in the stories. Like when Rand is looking through the crowd in Whitebridge, and then all of a sudden it's just a Fade walking right towards him. And likewise when Perrin is having his dream of being back in Master Lohin's kitchen, and his wife is just making stew, I think. And then all of a sudden, Balsamon just comes in through the back door, like all casual. And I loved how this was done every time because Jordan never interrupted a scene to introduce something sudden. They were just seamlessly put in there, and you kind of have to do like a double take. Did that just happen? Because I remember when I was reading Stormlight, like I think this would be an exaggeration, but it felt like every kind of sudden or hype moment interrupted something. Like somebody was saying something mid sentence, and then it's cut off, it's hyphenated. What's happening? And I just really liked how it wasn't done like that in this book. I'm getting into prediction territory now. Regarding the Dark One, I don't know if this is meant to be a reveal for us or something we should know that the characters don't, but the whole time throughout this book, they're calling him the Dark One, as in the Dark One, Shaitan. But this is like very clearly not Shaitan that we see in the book. In the prologue, we meet this guy called Alan Morin, and I just thought surely this is Alan Morin that we're seeing in people's dreams. As soon as we meet the Dark One in Rand's first dream, it's like very obviously him because he's wearing the exact same all black outfit from the prologue. So I was confused. I didn't know if Jordan was trying to put on the illusion for us or if it was just that our characters don't have that information yet. But anyways, I'm pretty sure that's Alan Morin. If it's not, I'm gonna be looking stupid. I'm very interested to see how things progress with it being him, if it is him, because if it is him, there is no shot that he was dealt with. I thought there was no shot that Agenor alone was dealt with. So I really don't see him being defeated. I think if anything, this was all some kind of I don't know, some kind of test for Rand, or not even just specifically Rand. Whoever they were looking for, it was a test for them. I don't know to what end. I guess if they thought that to wherever they were looking for was a dragon, maybe they were kind of checking how far along the reawakening is he gone. Maybe I really have no idea, but I'm not buying that they actually won the day. I think the whole party just absolutely played themselves at the end. I think they definitely done the opposite of what they intended. Maybe they didn't loosen his chains, but I think they did. So for my other predictions, I really love predictions in general. When I start a long story, it's one of my favorite parts of the process of going through a story. And there wasn't really a whole lot for me to make predictions from in this book. I felt like there was just so much that I barely even understood by the end that there was just less predictions I could have made. My original theory towards the start of the book, like as soon as they left Emmons Field, I thought Perrin will be the Dragon Reborn. Rand will be a servant. There was these guys called servants mentioned in the prologue. Alan Morin was one of them, and then he went to the dark side. And then I thought Matt is just 100% because of his mischievous personality. He is going to 100% end up as a dark friend or a dreadlord, whatever the term was. So my reasoning for this, when it comes to Matt, it's obvious. It's just his mischievous personality is just a dead giveaway. It's going to lead towards the dark side. When it comes to Perrin, he was described as this. He's really big, stocky guy, but he's actually pretty timid, and he wouldn't be the type to be overly aggressive. So I just thought him being the dragon would juxtapose that nicely. So I thought, okay, surely he might be the dragon. And then the reason I didn't think Rand was the dragon, even though it's so heavily hinted, is because it's so heavily hinted. I just thought him being the dragon might be too convenient. I still think Matt is screwed. I think he's destined to go to the dark side. I'm not sure how much worse he'll be going forward, but I think when he gets to Tar Valon, maybe one of the members of the Black Aja might kind of screw him up a bit more when they try to cure him, but actually just make him worse. And then for Perrin, I'm going to be stupidly stubborn about this in true Emmons Fielder fashion. I think he will still be the dragon, and if not him, then somebody we haven't even met yet, and I'll elaborate on that. So for the next bit of evidence for this just complete crackpot theory, I had to take down notes, so I will be looking at this screen to read off the notes because I was looking at so much shit that I just can't remember it all. So the main thing I was looking at here was the stuff that Min said she saw when she looked at the different characters when they were still in Bayerlon, and she has some kind of ability to see things that will happen in the future pertaining to each character that she looks at. So when she looks at Perrin and Rand, they both had crowns. Now Perrin's crown was a broken one and Rand's was a golden one made of laurel leaves or some shit like that. I think just because the dragon was in such a bad state in the prologue, I don't think he would have the golden crown to represent him. I don't. It's kind of grasping at straws there, but I think the broken one would be a better representation. So in the prologue at the very end, we get these two excerpts, and they both give you some information about prophecies. Well, actually, the first one is about the breaking of the world, but the second one is kind of about prophecies, and it's called the Cycle of the Dragon. Now, in the Cycle of the Dragon text, there is the mention of the Lord of the Dawn, the Prince of Morning, and the Dragon. Now, I assumed these were three pseudonyms for the dragon. Now, they might very well be, but just to support my theory, I'm going to assume they aren't because I think there's some decent evidence that they refer to three different people. I could just be completely off here, but the theory making is part of the fun for me, so I'm going to go with it. And I believe these two other names besides the dragon are referring to two different servants. So in the Cycle of the Dragon, it is said that the Prince of Morning will sing to the land that green things will grow. And Min saw trees flowering all around Perrin when she looked at him. The Cycle of the Dragon also says the Lord of the Dawn will shelter the people from the dark and the great sword of justice will defend us. When Min looked at Rand, she saw a sword that wasn't a sword. I think this text was alluding to that there is 2 servants that need to show up before the dragon is truly reborn, or at least 2 servants that will be there when the dragon is reborn as well. And I think that the stuff we see from Min is kind of confirming that Perrin and Rand are these 2 servants. Now, this would mean that there does have to be a third person who is the dragon who has not been introduced yet, because I don't think it's Matt. I really doubt it's Matt. If it is, hats off to Jordan for that. So as far as what Min saw in Matt, I think that's just further just piling on to Matt being on the dark side. She saw the Horn of Valir and a laughing face and the dagger from the Shadar Logoth. Now the dagger that's already been paid off, but the other 2 things, I think the smiling face, I don't think that's alluding to the fact that Matt has that kind of personality where he's laughing a lot and he's mischievous and stuff like that. I think that's hinting that when Matt does go to the dark side, he'll be so far gone, he'll be so high up there that he will replace, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but I think he'll replace Balthamil, or however you say that. I think the laughing face Min saw is actually referencing the leather carapace of the smiling face that we saw at the end. As far as the horn is concerned, I'm not sure what Matt will do. Maybe he'll be the one to actually blow the horn while he's still on the side of good. Or if he's already on the side of dark by then, maybe he breaks it or steals it. Maybe he's compelled by the dagger. So that's all for the crackpot part of the predictions. For the rest, I think Moraine is definitely going to backstab everybody at some point. I just don't trust her at all, even at the end of this story. I think she will backstab them 100%, and I'm going to keep believing that until the 14th book, if it takes that long for it to be revealed. I just don't trust her at all. At the end of the book, we see her smiling to herself and saying the dragon has been reborn. If we are to believe literally anything we heard about Aes Sedai during this whole book, she should not have that reaction to the dragon of all people being reborn. She should be at least a bit concerned. She shouldn't be smiling to herself, and that just was huge red flag to me. I think everything that has happened so far has been a part of her plan, or at least stuff that she wanted to happen. I do like to base some predictions in irony. I think it does work out sometimes. So on that basis, I am going to predict that the Children of Light is actually operated by Dark Friends. I think maybe not all of them, but I think definitely towards the top of the organization, they're definitely Dark Friends. Because I think it would just be so fitting and ironic if the people who are so intent and extreme about finding Dark Friends are actually all Dark Friends by extension. So that's all I have to say for this book, guys. I did really love this introduction to the world and story. I can't wait to continue it as soon as I'm done recording this. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what I missed out on down below and your general thoughts on the video as well. The next video will be The Great Hunt. I don't have anything else planned to be read until I finish Wheel of Time, unless it just really falls off at some point, which I pray doesn't happen. I've seen some pretty bad reviews for some of the books towards the middle-ish end. So yeah, it'll probably just be Wheel of Time on here for the next good while. So that's all I had to say, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.